No, I was taking so long. I'm taking so long to get Chris to bring my mask back that my cupboard was hanging in the water, and I kind of finally figured out I better put a fake mask in so I can. Okay. Now I can let it sit.
Rockin' chicken chipotle.
That's mine. Yours. There's two things that.
Yes.
What are you doing?
I don't want to be called Michael's iPad.
You might want to mute then.
Yeah. Hi guys. That's my son Henry. He's like, I don't want to be called Michael's iPad.
Perfect. We're glad Henry's joining us tonight.
Yeah. Welcome.
He's our next generation.
Well, I don't want to be called Sharon either, but you know what can you do?
Now you tell us.
Man called Sue. Here he is.
Oh, look at this. This is better.
Yeah, a little bit better view. Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Susan Rooney. I am somehow in charge of these Zoom panels this year. We're trying to give us something to do to talk sailing, talk story until we can actually get on the water again, which sounds like might be sooner than later, hopefully. And we started with the classes that just really have a lot of history at St. Francis, and the lasers are right there in the history zone. And remarkably, Don Trask showed up on the list of all of these fleets that I'm looking at. So it's kind of the Don Trask show this year. But to start us off, we have our Commodore Bill Dana.
See, that's all you can do, TB. I have to either add or.
Evening, everybody.
I don't know how to get in.
I'm going to mute everybody, and then Bill, you can unmute yourself.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody showing up for these things. This is actually a lot of fun. I'm glad everyone's still engaged with the club and talking about sailing, even though we can't go sailing. But as Susan said, hopefully we will in short order. And ironically, it's going to be probably single-handed boats. So so the laser guys probably will have the first opportunity to get out and go racing when that happens. So so dust off your boats and be ready. So I was thinking about laser stories. I have an infinite number of laser stories from chaperoning kids over the last decade. I think Little Lawson Willard probably is in half of those stories, but anyway, but I will think back when I first joined the club, or maybe I wasn't even a member. I decided to do the spring dinghy, and I borrowed a laser, and I went out a couple days practicing. Most of my laser experience before that was in Cape Cod, and a lot windier out here. So I went out, and the first or second race, it was pretty windy. I was going downwind, and my boom vang failed. And I was trucking along, and obviously when that happens, lots of twist and auto roll down. And when I was rolling down, I of course reached up to the weather rail and tried to save myself. And it was probably a Bill Chrysler boat. So the seam up there was like a fiberglass hacksaw blade. And I went sliding down with my hands, and I think I still have all the scars on both hands from that experience, and which wasn't a terribly fun one. But then the guy driving the crash boat came over to help me out, and it was Bob Billingham. And I went to high school with Bob. He was a bit older than me, and I don't think I had seen him since high school. And anyway, he rescued me and got me back at the dock, and it was fun catching up with him, even though I had salt water and wounds in all four of my fingers. But anyway, that was fun. I've done a little bit of laser sailing since then, but mostly at Tinsley. So I would love to hear all of your crash and burn stories, and I will turn it back over to Susan. And thank you all for showing up. Have a great time tonight.
Great. Thank you, Commodore.
Thanks, Bill.
And welcome, everybody. I'm still admitting more people. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of how lasers came to be at St. Francis. It sounds like Don Trask was a key player in that. So I don't know if Don wants to tell the story or Bill Chrysler wants to help launch the story, but maybe one of you guys can talk about that for us.
I'll let Don tell a story, and then I'll tell the real story afterwards.
Okay. It really got started with the Star class. Carl Peterson from Vancouver came down to San Francisco. I had a wooden Icon Lob, and I sold the wooden Icon Lob, and I was going to buy a bucking boat. And Carl said, look, I'm from Vancouver. I've got a starboat mold in Vancouver. I built 3 boats for people in Vancouver, and none of them know how to sail. But I think you're in between boats. I'd sure like to build a boat for you. And I said, well, I'm about ready to buy one from Bucking. He said, well, you provide the material. You get the mold down here from Vancouver, and you can help me build a starboat. Well, that was the start of it. We built a starboat in the lumber yard on Highway 101, just by the Belvedere turnoff. And we had a $35 a month garage, which we could fit only the hull mold in. The deck mold had to be outside. It took us 3.5, 4 months to build the boat on the weekends and at night. And when it was done, there was a major regatta in Miami, the Bacardi Cup, probably 75, 80 boats. And that was the first event we went to. I asked my dad to crew with me. He was 65 at the time, and 63 at the time. And we went, and surprisingly, we took 3rd behind Dingus Schoonmaker and Lowell North. And about a month later, we ended up in NASA. Doug Home crewed for me, and we had the boat outside the yacht club, all rigged. Somebody crawled inside of the boat, laid down inside the cockpit, and said, "You built this boat?" And I said, "Yes." He introduced himself, and it was Ian Bruce. And Ian said that he was down sailing in the Regatta to pay back the fellow that he was crewing with, because the guy made him a video, and he just returned from the New York Boat Show the week before, where he had 10 days of the boat show, and he sold 115, 120 lasers at that boat show. And he said, "We need to, is your wife here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "We need to eat dinner tonight. I've got something I want to show you." After dinner, we went to the library, and he pulled out a black and white photograph of somebody sailing around in a reservoir that had snow around the perimeter. And I looked, he said, "Do you recognize that boat?" I said, "No, but I know who's sailing it." He said, "You do? Who was that?" And I said, "That was Bill, who was the guy from Denmark?"
Hans Fogh.
Yes, Hans Fogh. Hans Fogh was sailing that laser. And he said, "You know Hans?" I said, "Yes, we sailed with him in Europe a couple of times." And he said, "You made this boat out of Eric's foam." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that's what we have for the laser deck." He said, "Do you think that your factory our $35 a month garage, our factory would be prepared to build lasers on the West Coast?" He said, "I don't know how I'm going to get boats to the West Coast. I can't put them on the Greyhound bus. I can't put them in a box. It's just going to be, I don't know what I'm going to do." He said, "So if you want to come back, we could sign up an agreement, and you could have the territory in Canada, Mexico, and all the way back into Texas, half of the United States." So I went back a couple of weeks after we got back from NASA and signed up a contract. We had the laser and anything else laser built for 25 years. We could buy the tooling if it was going to be the next boat for cost plus 10%. And that would be the start. So Ian Bruce put, I think, 25 or 26 lasers in a freight car and sent them to us. And I called Bill and my starboat crew, and Bill and Carl Peterson and myself and Suzanne Westaway, a good family friend that helped us along the way. Started with a little factory in Corte Madera. It was 1,800 square feet. And when we looked at that 1,800 square feet, we said, "My God, we'll never fill this up. We're going to have to rent part of this to an auto mechanic or something, because this is way too big." Well, within about 3 or 4 weeks, we were looking for another building, and the fellow built us 2 more buildings on that site. And now in another 2 or 3 months, we were looking for more space, and we ended up with a factory in San Rafael. It was 5,000 square feet when we first bought it. By the time we finished up the laser program and building 30 star boats and building 300 J24s, we had about 5,200 feet under the factory roof. At times we were building 14 lasers a day, which means in the mold and out of the mold, 14 were coming out of the molds every day. It was very hectic. Everybody wanted a laser. We had no problem. The fastest we could build them was terrific. We got, after the second year, I think we built 630 the first year, 1,100 the next year. And then we went to the bank because we couldn't build them fast enough to get them to all of the dealers in the early part of the year to start the season. So we went to the bank and we asked for a loan that we could build boats during the winter months. Well, they gave us a loan. That was a lot of money, and we were going to build boats like crazy. At the end of about, I guess, in February of the next year, we had, I think, 1,000 boats stacked up on the wall. Is that right, Bill? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was probably something like that. It was a lot of boats.
Yeah. So we started the spring with a lot of inventory, and there was a recession that year. Well, we ended up with 500 boats in inventory. The bank wasn't very happy with that, but we recovered quickly and it took off again. We had, I guess at the top, we had 65 employees. The first person I called when we had an opportunity to start this was Bill Chrysler. He had crewed for me in the Star. He was just graduated from college in San Diego, had been Lowell Norse boat boy. And I said, Bill, you got to come up. You're going to be the production manager. Oh, okay. So he came up. Carl Peterson stayed around. He was in charge of the wood shop, and we started. You remember anything about that, Bill?
God. Yeah, I do, Don. That was quite a ride. Originally, it was starboats, and I thought, I don't know if that's what that doesn't sound like a career to me, because I'd done a little of that already in San Diego with Eichenlob. But then you came up with this laser idea, and I thought that sounded more like a real business. So I packed my Volkswagen, 59 Volkswagen, and my wife, and piled whatever I could in the car and moved up. And you found me one of the guys that worked for you, Jim Carroll. His wife had an apartment in San Anselmo, and you set us up with that. Jim Carroll's brother was Pete Carroll, the football coach. And so that was a kind of a fun acquaintance. And then I remember going home at night, Carl and I would spray gel coat, and Carl would spray the gel coat. I wasn't skilled enough yet to spray gel coat. So I would be in charge of cleaning the hoses and cleaning the gun. And Carl would spray all the molds in the evening after everybody had gone home. And let's see, we'd go out to Lyons for dinner. Then we'd come back to the shop about 7 o'clock. We'd spray until around 9:30. And then I'd go home. And I remember sitting down on the couch the first time, and I was exhausted. I sat there for a while. And then when I went to get up, I couldn't get up because I had so much overspray on my clothes that it all bonded I glued myself to the couch. So those were the early days of laser building.
Great.
Yeah, anyway, Susan, go ahead.
So of all of the people on the call here, if you want to use your little reaction thing down on the bottom toolbar, if you sailed a Don Trask laser, give us a thumbs up or a clap.
Yeah, well, somebody would.
We'll see some, hopefully. There we go. Scotty Easom.
All right.
Susie
Hey,
Klein.
Scotty.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
He doesn't have a video on.
So okay, great. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Tracy,
I made a list, but I don't know how to do what you're asking here. I'm too old.
bottom line, it says reactions.
Action. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Tracy Usher is with us. Tracy, what is your role with the laser class internationally?
Currently, I'm the president of the International Laser Class Association.
And how long have you been? How long have you been president?
Since 2011, a long time. It's past time for me to leave.
Cool. What are your main focuses with that?
Oh God, you don't want to hear this whole story. I mean, we've been, obviously trying to transition, in order to meet world sailing requirements to maintain our Olympic status. So we've been going through a kind of a change in name almost, and bringing on a whole string of new builders. And I guess the good thing to say there is that we've now completed the process and have 8 new builders, all approved and producing boats and boats being pushed out to the marketplace, including two builders in Asia, 1 in Oceania, 1 in South America, 3 in Europe, and 1 in Japan still. So we feel like now that we're cresting our first 50 years, we're setting ourselves up to maintain our position here for the next 50 years. And I'm pretty excited about the future, actually.
That's great. Thank you. And how did you get into the laser sailing, Tracy?
Well, I grew up down in Monterey, right? And first there was somebody in our yacht club that bought a laser and was, kind enough to let all the kids at the club go sailing on this boat. So we'd go crashing into everything possible in the marina and the outer harbor. And we were all bitten, right? So I saved up my money and bought my first boat when I was in high school. I really felt like I came late to the party. I got my boat in 1974. It was sail number 17586, one of Don's boats. And that was the start of an epic journey.
And how many lasers have you owned since then, do you think?
I at least a dozen, but I know I've lost count.
Thank you. Ernie Rodriguez is on our call here tonight. Ernie, if you can unmute yourself, you talked about the slalom in the questions I asked you in advance. Why don't you tell us why you think that's such a cool regatta? Give him a moment here to
Quietest I've ever heard.
I pushed him into technology tonight. Okay. Does anybody else want to talk about the slalom? Chris Boom?
Yeah, Chris should talk. He won the thing the first, 2 or 3 times?
No, I was second in the first one and I won the second one. But for that in the early, because I'm one of the guys that was from the beginning, and I didn't know why Don let me become a laser dealer until he told me about this recession thing right now. But I was finishing up at San Jose State and I got a call from Don. I met him, everybody knew Don Trask, and I sailed a snipe for 1 year, so I met him a little bit. And he said, "Hey, Boomer, get a life jacket and come to Alameda. I got a boat I think you'll like." And so I go to Alameda by the outside breakwater, not in the marina, not in the harbor, not in a ramp or anything. And I get there and there's this trailer with 10 lasers on it. And I'm thinking, and then guys start showing up, and then pretty soon we're lifting the boats over the rocks. We rig them up and we go out and have a beautiful sail. It's ironic that the lasers are now becoming very, there's a lot of laser activity right there where we were. And when we finished, everybody had a great time. And Nancy Trask, in the beginning years, the only trophies we had were, besides the laser cubes that came along a little bit later, were laser baskets, which Nancy made a nice picnic basket, the kind that I would never even know existed if it wasn't for Nancy. and they had wine that was way better than any wine that we were drinking in our 20s, and salami and French bread and wine glasses and wine openers. And you never left the regatta with any wine or food or anything, but you always left with feeling you were at a great place with great people. And then the slalom thing, the slalom started, that was sort of in the midst of, we had an awesome group of sailors sailing like on Tuesday nights at St. Francis, and I think we sailed in the evening a lot. I think that probably helped the bar sales a little bit. But the whole slalom thing was really fun. Great people, and since I don't think Van Wilson's here, I'll tell you his story of, he's a great sailor, and he was a kid from Marin County. And the very first laser slalom, he took the bus over from Marin on his had his life jacket and everything with him, and he came in, and it was one of those days when the first 2 years, it seems like the tops of the waves were blowing off when it was that windy, and we didn't have radials, but we wrapped the sail around the mast twice to lower the sail a little bit when it was really windy. And then he got in, and there was a big board that showed who you were racing against and all that stuff. And he looked up, and he was sailing against Don Trask, and he turned around, and he got on the bus and went home. He never even sailed. He was so intimidated by having to sail against Don. But he turned into, we all know, is a great sailor. But I can tell you the year that I won the regatta was the most tired I was ever was, because it was double eliminations. And so I think the first day I lost to Bob Smith in the first race. So I went to the losers bracket, and you had to keep winning these races in order to keep advancing. And then if you won enough, you got to sail against the guys who were in the winners bracket, who just were sitting around all day watching everybody sail. And it was really hard. I've never been that tired from any regatta as that one, but it was such a great time with the lasers. The camaraderie was great. The sailors were great, but everybody had fun. And I tell you, right now in San Francisco, with guys like Steve Aguilar, our district secretary, and of course all the work that Tracy has done, and Mike Bishop now. I mean, the laser class is really strong in San Francisco. We need more young kids, but it's not going anywhere, that's for sure. It's really nice.
We've got a couple of them on the call tonight, so we'll get to some questions from them. Andrew Holdsworth, you're the youngin in the Masters group, but your name's sure on a lot of trophies. So talk to us about sailing. How did you get into lasers, and what got you into St. Francis sailing?
Oh, well, my first play with the laser was when I grew up in Yorkshire in England, sailing on a reservoir on top of a Yorkshire Dale. And the laser was kind of like the cool boat, and all the cool kids had them. And so I eventually got to borrow one for a while, and it was quite good because the wind was quite light, so I could keep up at that point, because I was tiny. At that point, mucking around on this reservoir in the Yorkshire Dales, and if the wind was light, you could keep up. And I wasn't really keen to give the boat back, and that was kind of my introduction to laser sailing. And then I never really touched it until I actually moved to the States a long time later. And I didn't really do very much with it. I just sort of played with it because I was learning how to work here and live in America. But really, I think the great thing about the laser sailing was really changed actually when I had knee surgery. I had knee surgery to repair a knee, and I said, God damn it, I'm going to get back in the laser and enjoy it. And I really did a lot of gym work and everything to get myself fit enough. And I stopped trying to beat myself up trying to sail a full rig. I started sailing the radio, and I just had a ball. And I just said, well, everything's a reset. I've spent most of my life crewing in boats, not steering. I was happy to go down to Mexico and learn how to sail a laser properly. And I think that's a really important part of laser sailing on the West Coast, is being able to disappear down to the place down in La Cruz and learn how to sail waves properly in the warm in the middle of January and stuff. And just be open-minded and be willing to be coached. It's not easy to start being coached at the age of 46 or whatever it was when I started doing it all over again. So, that was really cool, and I've just loved it ever since. And I've learned to love laser sailing much more than I ever did as a kid. It's been a lot more fun, and I think the introduction of the laser into the Olympics has got to be the best thing that ever happened, because there's so many coaches who know how to make the boats go fast. There's videos, there's books written. Everyone can get an idea of what they should be doing, and they can get instruction on this. And if they're willing to just put time in, they can just have a ball sailing these boats. And you get back what you put in. If you put the time in, you just get it back in spades. And that's the most fantastic thing about the laser sailing. It rewards everything you do. And the other thing is, in the masters racing, you get to sail against people who are just awesome sailors. You know, they've been there, they've done it, and they'll buy you a beer afterwards. Or suddenly the six-pack comes out of the boot of the car after sailing. Spent a lot of time actually sailing up in the gorge in the summer. And, you know, we were in COVID lockdown mode last summer, and myself and who's become one of my closest friends, Bill Symes, who's a friend of a lot of people here. You know, we went sailing every weekend in the gorge, and there was a six-pack in the boot of the car afterwards, every time. You know, and it was one of the best summer sailing we ever had. You know, just learning how to sail our boats and have fun. It was great.
Great, thank you. So Andrew or anybody else, one of the questions from our junior sailors is, what are good exercises for cross training to be ready to sail your laser?
I would say just ride your bike. Get on a bike and ride. You know, that's probably the best thing. Go climb up Mount Tam a few times on your bike. That's probably the best thing. You know.
Chris or Tracy, any other input there?
Yeah,
I just thought it
I
was
haven't mastered that
drinking.
part of the sailing yet, so.
Okay. Another question from the audience, mast step issues. Are the boats still built the same way, or is there a year or whole number when the issue was resolved?
I think they're built the same way. They have the same tooling that they had to put the mast in the right spot. And so the rakes are pretty much very similar. I think that the boats now look really nice. I mean, they're really much better than when we started, I think. I do remember one of the regattas, and it was the responsibility of Commodore Tompkins suggested that we do a around the island race around Alameda, which was called the Chichester, I think, Chichester. And so we started off of Mariner Square. We had a starting line that was a box, so you could go either way. When the gun went off, you could go south down around the bridges or out the estuary. And I remember we had a lot of the wives were on a power boat, and they were following the race. And as it got towards the end of the day, the tide was going out, and it was very shallow, going down the outside of Alameda down to the Bay Farm Island Bridge. And you could just see a little trough, and the mud on either side. You pull your rudder off the cleat, and you let the rudder go up all the way, and you pull the board up. And if you skipped on the mud, that was okay. But I remember my wife was in a power boat, and they got off the track. They got out of the channel, and they revved the engine, and they couldn't get it. So one of the guys took an anchor, and he walked out over the mud with mud over his knees, put an anchor out. They all tried to pull. It was no use. So they were stuck on the mud until the tide changed. And the girls could see a standard gas station on the shore at Alameda. And they said, "Oh, we've got to go to the bathroom. Can we walk over there?" And as they were taking off their shoes and getting ready to walk in the mud, this worm came up from the mud, a little worm about this long. And they were stuck on the boat until the tide came in. But, that was a good race. That was a lot of fun. I think we're fortunate to have a lot of people in the class that had good ideas about regattas. We had a big following. We had good programs at a lot of the yacht clubs. So it was pretty easy to build a class and to do the marketing. It just did it by itself practically.
I think, Don, that was one of the big successes that I think really got it going. Was an awful lot of these races were just plain fun.
Yeah.
You know, the round the island thing was crazy race. I mean, you know, some people would go one way, some people would go the other. You'd get it, you know, somewhere around the Naval Air Station, people were crossing each other, trying to figure out. I mean, we got a lot of people to come to those things. And then the trailer with the instant regatta and the slalom. I mean, it just turned out to be a lot of fun to be a part of the laser crowd. And then, you know, and at the same time, it got really serious. But the serious sailing came, I think, as a consequence of that, because the fun stuff attracted a lot of people. And then good sailors came because that's where a lot of people were sailing. And anyway, I think that was a big part of it.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, guys. What are the not to miss regattas anywhere in the world? What are the ones that, if you're a laser sailor, whether regular laser sailing or masters, that you want to at least say you've sailed in once? I know the slalom's up there.
If you're a master sailor, you want to sail the master worlds. I mean, that no matter where it is in the world, it's just an amazing event that brings together so many sailors from all over the world in kind of a old school way. In that, you know, you don't see these people all year long, except for that one regatta a year, and you get together with them and you know, you become good friends and sail hard. You know, when they go home, they're going to train really hard against you, and then next year, you know, you'll duke it out again, which is really different from the modern Olympic sailors who are basically sailing against each other, you know, 9 months of the year in their training programs. So that, you know, the Worlds is just another regatta form. But the Master Worlds is a very special event.
Yeah, I'd say it's super special. And, you know, there's a lot of people from all walks of life and sailing experience at the event, having fun. You know, there's a lot of effectively pros who are on busman holidays. You know, they spent their whole life hanging on to a backstay, telling owners not to miss marks out, and there they are doing it themselves, you know, capsizing and crashing all over this place. You know, they step into the laser sometimes a couple of weeks before the event and make all the same rookie mistakes that everybody else does. It's kind of a great leveling regatta. You know, we're all in it together. It's super fun.
Nice. Are there regattas up in the gorge, Andrew, that are fun to do, that are different from San Francisco Bay?
Well, the gorge, you know, I'm sold on it. You know, I think it's the best dinghy sailing venue on the planet. I haven't been to Lake Garda yet, but I heard that's pretty good too. But, you know, I really would recommend people go up and spend some time there, either do a clinic or do a regatta up there. You know, it's consistently windy, it's warm, it's fresh water. The scenery is to die for. I don't know what else I can do to plug it. It's just fantastic. They do have a couple of regattas. They usually have one laser clash regatta a year. They do have a one design regatta. And the one thing that I haven't had a chance to do yet is they have what we call the gorge blowout, which they just get windier and lumpier as they go inland up the river effectively against the current, but with a lot of breeze, and so the waves just get bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm really looking forward to hopefully do that this year. So that's supposed to be the legendary race, and you know, that's the one I would like to have a go at sometime. Just
to point out that the wind doesn't always blow from the west to the gorge, and in fact, I've done the blowout twice with the wind blowing the wrong way. Yeah, it's definitely not as much fun when it's blowing the wrong way.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, it is a super location, and you know, I can't, you know, it's really grassroots sailing. You know, there's You know, you get changed in the parking lot, launch, go sailing, have fun. You know, and it's getting back to, I think, how sailing is going to be the next couple of years. Grassroots sailing in single-handers, people mucking in, having fun. Bill likes to call them, let's call them bushwhack regattas, where we basically have the sailing instructions on one piece of paper. We ring round during the week and just show up and race. You know, really informal, low-key stuff. But we're just as competitive as if it was organized. You know, it's like pretty good fun.
So Ernie says that sounds like sailing from St. Francis to Tinsley in a laser. That sounds crazy to me. Should we challenge our junior sailors to do that this summer? Tor and Henry, you've got an assignment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd say that the gorge.
You muted yourself,
It's
Chris.
really a special place, and I was all psyched up. I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I went the first time and always heard about it, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And you know, a lot of people camp out, and you know, you're sitting there having a barbecue with a bunch of sailors as the sun goes down, and it's just beautiful. But we went up there for the time I did the gorge blowout. The wind it was 103 degrees in Portland, and the wind was blowing the wrong direction. So we ended up driving our cars to Hood River, and then there was still no wind. So we got towed halfway, and then we sailed in like, you know, 12 knots of wind with the current. It was definitely not a gorge, but it really getting towed for 10 miles. It really gave you a time to look around and how beautiful that place is. It is just special. And the other place that's not nearly the physical challenge that the gorge is, but I think it's one of the most fun places to sail is Huntington Lake. I mean, the Huntington Lake Regatta should be on everybody's schedule. And that's, we had the first of the Don Trask regattas for the Masters PCCs there, because it's just a great place to sail.
Yeah. And you know, I have a great fondness, actually, dare I say, to the city front on an ebb tide, and it's foggy and blowing old boots. You know, I have just an affection for it. You know, this is really where we learned how to keep our boats upright and catch waves. And you know, there's nothing quite like it. You know, it is an incredible piece of racetrack. You know, especially the racetrack is so one-sided, then you have to get into the beach, and then you have to deal with the issues of how close do you go in near the clubhouse, and do you tack on shifts, and it's lumpy as hell. And then by the time you've navigated yourself up to the top mark, then the fun starts. You know, you're catching waves and you're catching puffs, and you know, the laser has become such an athletic game downhill, with you sailing really deep by the lee and then rounding up into broad reach and then back again and back again. You know, I don't know if people have seen modern laser sailing downwind in waves. You don't stay still. You know, you're changing course the whole time. It's not downwind for a rest. It's actually harder work downwind than upwind. But it's what a puzzle. And you know, I took a couple of months off the boat, and we went out last weekend, Chris and I, and it was just great to get back in the boat on what was a gorgeous weekend and to just catch waves, just practice catching waves again. You know, it's really special.
You know, hey guys, Michael Vare, I'm Henry's dad. So we turned Henry on to lasers a couple of years ago, sailing on the Belvedere Lagoon. So thanks to a longstanding Thursday night laser races that we do informally on Belvedere Lagoon with Rich Bergson has organized it. And we get up to 15 or 20 boats on the line, and we have a large group. We get together. It's very fun. No talking about work. You know, sometimes it's just straight racing, buoy racing, or we do team racing. And then we have a junior fleet, and so Henry started it. He started racing with us, and then we got a couple other kids that join in as well. Sometimes we get the junior instructors from SFYC to come over. Al Sargent comes over every once in a while. So anyway, we got a good momentum going, and I think that we've turned on a group of 10, 12, 14-year-old kids to come and join us.
Great.
Good job.
Awesome.
I mean, what I love from being somebody that's organized and does a lot of race committee for dinghy regattas is watching multiple generations come through and hearing the stories from junior sailors from each generation of laser regattas and travel and all that. Are there other places in the world that you guys have gone to sail lasers that you've enjoyed? We know Andrew wants to go to Lake Garda. Where else have you gone that's fun?
Playa de Bravo,
Nice.
Mexico.
Nice.
Well, and La Cruz, you know, in Puerto Vallarta, that's pretty special.
The cruise is really the spot to go to. It's just amazing sailing every day in the spring. You know, it's a lot of these places are pretty seasonal. If you go at the right time, you have fantastic sailing conditions every day.
Tracy, how many boats have Laser built now? What are the upper numbers?
We're just about ready to cross 218,000 sail numbers.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, we've been maintaining about 2,000 boats a year. We kind of dropped a little bit the last couple of years because of the various issues that we were kind of dealing with. But I think we're poised right now to try to push that back up to about 3,000 a year worldwide. And I think we have a lot of opportunity because you know, a lot of these builders are going to be servicing markets that have been kind of neglected for the past decade. So we're pretty hopeful to see a big spurt in growth here.
Tracy, my first boat was $700. What's a laser cost nowadays?
You know, I think in the United States, that a base boat is running about $7,200. If you tack on a composite upper section and maybe a few other nice features like I mean, actually, I see that Chris Brown is on here and he could tell you exactly because he's the West Coast dealer. But I think about $7,800 to $7,900 total for a boat that you go racing with.
10 times.
Where would that boat be built most likely?
When we started, what was the sales price of when we started build? Seems to me it's just maybe 765 or
695.
I bought my boat for $750 when it was brand new. So the prices are higher, but you know, look, it's been, you know, 50 years and inflation. And actually, I think that, you know, when you look at what you get now, especially given the quality of the product that's being built, I think it's quite a good deal. As far as where it would, I mean, the boats, there's no North American manufacturer of boats right now, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think the boats that are coming in right now are primarily from the UK, from Ovington. But now that the two Asian manufacturers are coming on, I've seen advertisements already for them as well. So I think there'll be, I'm not really sure how it's all going to shake out with what the dealer, but I think there are a lot of options. And as near as I can see from the work that the technical officer has been doing, the boats are super high quality now.
Hey Tracy, this is Chris from West Coast Sailing. You were spot on the pricing, and yeah, for the builders as well. But feel free to direct any equipment questions my way.
Thanks, Chris, for joining us. Chris, what do you think are what are the top regattas that our junior sailors should aim for?
Gosh, yeah, before the pandemic started, it was a lot easier to answer that question. There's just so many good options to choose from. And, you know, we had fun filling up our event schedule, filling up our gear trailer, put on charters. It's a little more complicated now, but, you know, just looking at the laser.org website, there's a great circuit there. It's easy to hit a rotation between different midwinters regattas on through the season. We're very biased towards sailing in the gorge.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else have questions or stories of early days of laser sailing on San Francisco Bay?
Susan,
Thanks, Bill.
I'm gonna just real quick, I'm gonna see if I got a dash, I'm afraid, but Don might tell you a real quick story about the factory seconds, because that was kind of how he was able to seed the fleet. It was amazing. There were times there where we were making more factory seconds than we were making first, so we could sell them directly out of the factory. So anyway, Susan, thanks so much for putting this together. I'm sorry I have to leave, but it's really great to see all of you people. And I even saw Bob Gehring there, Don's cousin, who still owns the laser that Don sold him. And I don't think it's ever been in the water. It's been hanging in his garage in Mill Valley. for 50 years. So, good night, everybody.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, Don, you want to tell us
Scotty.
about seconds?
Yeah, I'll tell you that. But before I tell about seconds, a long distance trip on a laser, I'm sure that there's a few stories, but I remember one. Joe Hulse was going to school in somewhere in Southern California, San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
And he took his laser, launched it in Morro Bay, and sailed around. What's the point there?
Yeah.
It's so hard to get around. It's so windy.
Inception.
Yeah, Conception. From motor from around Conception in a laser, and his laser leaked, and he was very concerned that he was going to get water in his laser. He had a sponge and he had a port, and at night he was afraid that he couldn't tell if there was any water in the boat. So he put marbles in the boat, and the marbles would roll around, and pretty soon there would be no noise, and he'd know, oh, there's water in the hull. So he'd open up and he'd bail until the marbles would roll around again. But he made it all the way to Santa Barbara. That was a pretty good trip. He said he slept on the deck going around the point, and she said it was really windy. But he was a crazy kid. Anyway.
You know, one of the things that I think that was probably very special for the laser class when it got started was how many events there were for women. And I noticed we have Susie Klein here, which was one of the early gals who was a really good sailor, and Tracy Usher's here, and she's for later. But you know, I remember there was the women's regatta over in Richardson's Bay, and there were a lot of good female laser sailors too, which always made it nicer for the guy laser sailors. But
and remember Harriet?
Oh yeah, Harriet, yeah.
Yeah, Harriet was she was probably one of the best early women in the lasers.
Poppy Truman. Really?
Yeah, Poppy Truman, of course.
Super sad.
Yes, because she went to the Women's Worlds in 77. She qualified in the lasers.
Susie, are you still sailing lasers?
No, I got taken out by a car accident in 1985 that kind of ruined my laser sailing career. But I still do a lot of sailing, but
nice.
Not quite as athletic as a laser. But I raced in the 1975 heavy weather laser slalom. And Chris, was that the year you won or the year Craig won? Yep.
There's a pro.
Oh, I raced in the first two. I'm not sure what years they were. So the Carl Van
I think it was 74 and 75. And did Paul Elfstrom, I guess he just came out and gave clinics. I remember he gave a clinic in, I think it was 74. And Don, you must have organized that.
Yes. We met Paul Elfstrom in the Worlds, the Starboat Worlds in Copenhagen, and we became pretty friendly. And at that time, we were going to promote a laser event at the Yacht Club, and we called it the Elfstrom Regatta. And I called Elfstrom and said, I think the Yacht Club is able to send you a ticket, an airplane ticket to come to San Francisco and participate in this regatta. And he did. And he came over. He had never sailed a laser. He had won 4 gold medals in the Olympics. That's 16 years. And he had never seen a laser. We took a laser down to St. Francis at the dock, took all the parts down to the dock. And I didn't want to stand over him and say, now this is what you do with the master. I figured that he could figure it out. So there were, I think, Chris, I think you were there. Van Dyne was there. Bob Smith was there. I was there and Paul, and we let Paul put the boat together. I stayed on shore to watch that he was going to be okay. And we went out. He said, let me turn around the breakwater and go upwind, maybe 10 seconds. That's all I need. And he turned around, went upwind, stopped in 5 seconds, pulled the Traveler down as tight as it would go, leaned on the boom and locked the vang in really tight. He said, okay, I'm ready to go. And we went up the shoreline. And when we got up to Blackhauler, it was a nice reach out into the middle of the bay. And the four of us started out. And I said, I think I said, Paul, you go first. And then I think Chris and Smith and myself. And none of us could pass Paul Elson the first time he had been in the boat. We got out in the middle of the bay and he said, let me pick who goes next. He said, Smith, I want you to go first. I want you, Chris, to go second. Don, I want you to go third. I'm going to go fourth. And we started back to the club, and within maybe 2 minutes, he rolled over me, passed me, and he went for the next guy, rolled over that guy, rolled over the next guy. Was first to the breakwater by about 100 yards. And we said, how did you do that? And we had a meeting that night. We had a event at the junior high school in Marina, at the Marina Junior High School. And we had maybe 150 people at the event. And somebody asked him, how does he go so fast off the wind? How did he pass everybody off the wind? And he said, very, very simple. All you have to do is look over the wave and drive to the bottom of the next wave. Look over the wave and drive to the bottom. Well, he was fantastic. He really. And then they had a start at the yacht club, and there was a picture of this start. There were 101 lasers on the starting line at St. Francis. It was on a big board, maybe a half of a 4x8 plywood, and it showed the start. And Paul Ellsworth was at the leeward mark, and you could see the gun had just gone off. Everybody's lined up the line, and Paul Ellsworth has this perfect start out of the current at the leeward end of the line. He was going. He was a pretty phenomenal sailor, and we brought him back for the Masters Regatta in J24s. I think he came one other time.
Don, I remember, and there are probably 5 or 6 of us who are here right now who are at the meeting at the junior high school when somebody asked him that night about catching waves, and he was, somebody was describing it, and Elstrom like turned and looked at, he was like genuinely perplexed. He goes, what? Waves go faster than me? And everyone just cracked up the whole room. I mean, it was like, he couldn't fathom the idea of a wave going faster than him.
Yeah. No.
Weren't all the first sails made by Elstrom sailmakers?
Yes.
Yeah. And then did Hans Fogg take over that eventually?
No, I think Hans Fogg was in charge of Elstrom at the time. And he made all the sails. And then it turned to somebody in Annapolis. I can't remember the fellow's name. He made some very nice sails. They were very, very compatible. Mm-hmm. Do you remember his name? Bill's gone. No.
Yeah. Oh. Who makes the sails today? And are there favorite ones?
Well, I don't know if there's not supposed to be a favorite one, but North is one manufacturer. They make the sails in Sri Lanka, and then there's a British company called Hyde. They make their sails in the Philippines, and then a third sailmaker is Neil Pride, but they only make the standard Mark II sail.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about the sails is how now we sail the lasers is how much Cunningham we apply. You know, we just wail on the Cunningham to get the shape forward and flatten the sail. You know, it's probably the most important sail control of the lot. And there we are with the America's Cup, and they've got hydraulic rams to pull the Cunningham on just as tight on those boats. So it kind of, you know, the laser kind of had set a lot of trends really early. You know, and this whaling on the Cunningham is, you know, in a lot of classes, you're just not used to pulling it on that tight. But boy, do we whale on it. You know, it's not uncommon to see the grommet coming right literally down to the gooseneck. And they go, oh, now it's the right shape. And you know, if you did that on the dock, it would look quite distorted. But once you've got the power in the rig, it's a different game. And so the sails are kind of interesting. You know, they look like a bag of bits, and then suddenly they look reasonable. You know, there's part of the laser sailing is learning how much to pull on the sail control, and the big one being the Cunningham. Just well on it.
Yeah, Andrew and Tracy, that's been a big shift in the class in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, is all the control lines. It's the Cunningham, but also other controls. You want to talk a little bit about how that's changed and the class rules?
Well, I think it was 2001 that what's called the new rigging was officially entered into the system. So there was a big contentious vote. Everything in the laser class has to be a contentious vote, I think. But anyway, the idea was to move away from the original rigging, which had turned into what everybody called stupid rope tricks, where you put thimbles in the knots of your lines to try to figure out how to get the purchases you wanted. And so then the idea was to move both the outhaul and the Cunningham down to the deck where, you know, you could adjust it where the old Cunningham cleat used to be. But I think the most important advance really was the 15-to-1 bang and the fact that it was adjustable, because I think, you know, there were all these techniques that people had to learn when they got to the weather mark to let the bang off. You know, you had a knot in the line to get the bang off to the right tension, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But now with the new rigging, you know, you have so much more fine control. It's really kind of like revolutionized, I think, the sail control stuff. The flip side of that is that with the old rigging, you could only get so much tension on things because you were really limited in the amount of purchase you had. And now there's a lot more purchase in the various systems. So like Andrew was saying, you really are putting a lot more Cunningham on. And, you know, the idea there is that you're actually pre-bending the upper mast section and just flattening out the top of the sail. And the bang, with all the power you have in the bang, now you can really control the bend down in the low part of the sail. So there's actually a lot more. I mean, in the old days, I think people didn't really appreciate how much sail control that you could have on a laser, because you couldn't really get that much control with the old rigging. But with the new rigging, you have a lot more, you know, ability to really change the shape of the sail. In fact, when we went to develop the Mark II rig, one of the real reasons for, or the Mark II sail, one of the real reasons for introducing that sail in the beginning, you know, everybody hated the idea that there was a big diagonal wrinkle. It just, you know, didn't really look good in all the photographs. And the idea was, let's do something to try to get rid of that. But the sail has a little bit heavier material, which means it can withstand even more bang load and get more pre-bend out of the top section. And you can really crank on the Cunningham. So the result was that the wrinkle didn't go away, but the sail definitely, I mean, you know, you can really control the sail a lot more in that regard. So I you know, it's funny. And then the most funny thing about that is it does make a difference to the very top sailors, like the Olympic level sailors. They can, on a 2-minute upwind drill, they can eke out about a boat length with the Mark II sail and all this extra control over the Mark I sail. But, you know, for the average sailor, you just don't really see the difference in performance. So, you know, you get more, but it doesn't really change the characteristic of the boat, which I think is really interesting.
Well, I think, I don't know how many people sailed with the old lasers that had the 3-to-1 vang with the yellow plastic rope to do it. I think, you know, I think it's right that the original lasers didn't have the insert in the boom. Is that right? So the biggest improvement, I think, is the insert in the boom, which allows you to have because if you would have pulled the old boom, you could break it the first time with the new vangs. But having the new insert really does make the boat, and which allows the vang to work, which makes the boat so much nicer. Plus the clothes are a lot better too. It's a lot more comfortable sailing than the old days when you had blue jeans and wool sweaters on, you know. But when you were younger, you didn't get as cold. So I don't know, it's a trade-off.
So I just scrolled through the Elvstrom results and I see that we've got Mr. Esom was a previous winner, Ernie, Tracy. I saw Peter Phelan on the call. I tried to get Pat Andreasen to dial in, but he's on the East Coast, so I think it was probably past his bedtime. So Morgan Larson was in Mexico and didn't have good Wi-Fi. Any stories about the Elvstrom Regatta days where it was really a crazy one?
I've got a story about the Elvstrom Regatta. One year when previous to winning it, I thought I had it won the previous year. I think there was 90 plus boats in it.
Wow.
And me and this kid from Sweden were battling it out to get around the front of this tugboat that was pulling a ship going right through the middle of the race course. And the kid from Sweden and I just get around the front of the tugboat and we take off to go to the weather mark, and we're feeling really good about ourselves because we just barely made it in front of the tugboat. And we both look back and there is at least 25 boats sailing over the tow line between the tugboat and the ship. The tugboat was going very slow, so the chain and everything went low, and we looked back and there were 25 guys sailing over the tow rope, and we're just shaking our heads. I went and won that race, got back the next morning to the yacht club, and the yacht club threw the race out. And it cost me the regatta because they inserted another race on Sunday, and I'd won 4 of 6 races, and it wasn't enough. Kostecki won the regatta. I was the first in the heavyweight division. But it was crazy to look back, and these guys were sailing over this 6-inch tow rope for the ship going out the gate. And the race committee said they couldn't determine who those people were, so they decided to throw the whole race out. And I didn't know about it till the next morning, and I was pretty upset about it, but I was too stupid to know what to do about it, if anything. So lost that regatta, but I came back the next year. What a great event that was, to have 90 to 100 boats in those events. And just the best of the best guys. It was quite an event. So that was mine.
Anybody else? Any of our other anybody else can unmute themselves and share a story or ask a question?
I have one, my first Elvstrom. So it's funny, I actually, Scott, I was sailing, I did my first Elvstrom, I think it was a full rig, and I weighed all of 135 pounds on the city front. And I think the previous weekend I just crewed for Scott's dad, Bruce, on his Cal 29. And so the way they would jibe the Cal 29, a keel boat, was you'd pull the main sheet all the way in, pull the mainsail across, and then let it out. So I thought, oh, I guess that's how you jibe a laser too. So I'd pull my main sheet all the way in and immediately capsized. So I must have capsized like 30 times in the stem of the leg. I was probably like 14 years old. So yeah, I learned the hard way how not to jibe in a laser. My first Elvstrom. Spent a lot of time upside down.
Yeah, a question I have is what do we have to do to get more of everybody here who's on this call out on the water in lasers? What do we have to do? There's a lot of investment in juniors, but I think there's some pretty cool adults that should go sailing. That's really, there's a lot of boats just sitting on racks. And what do we have to do to get, people of my age out sailing? It's a lot of fun. I think it's the best value for money in terms of sailing and boat racing that you'll ever get. I don't think you will get better return on your money. in terms of racing and quality of sailing. I don't think.
I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for a friend, but are there weight divisions nowadays? Are there age divisions or weight divisions? And not for me, again, it's a friend of mine who wants to know about if you're heavy, what do you do?
I think it doesn't matter, you just have to hike.
Yeah.
You know, it's like.
What was the impetus for the carbon top sections? Was that for heavier people, or were people snapping them off, or what was going on?
No, it's just the aluminum sections. It's kind of a, you think about it, if you look at aluminum section, they typically, well, you look at any mast sections made for lasers, they have a mast collar, and they'll have a rivet to hold the mast collar in place.
Yeah.
And in an aluminum spar, that means that you need to always have the rivet facing, a certain direction in order. And so that just eventually the mast just starts to get tired and bends. It's the first thing it does is it bends, and the permanent bend was just really getting to be a problem. So I think the idea of the composite top sections, they're not really fully carbon. They're sort of a fiberglass with some carbon threading in them. And the idea really is to produce a spar that has the same bend characteristics, but won't develop a permanent bend.
Got it. Is that standard with a new boat, or do you have to step up and buy one of those?
I'll let Chris answer that question.
It is easy to get one with the composite top section. We sell them both ways.
Yeah.
So Andrew, I know a lot of times in the spring and summer you go out on weeknights. Is there a certain day of the week that people sail out of St. Francis, or there's days that people sail over at Alameda or Treasure Island?
Well, I'm actually most of the time based up in Seattle, so I just come down to the Bay Area to warm up and dry out, believe it or not. So, and we've got a couple of weekends down there having tolerated a Seattle winter. So I'm down for a couple of weeks. So we're launching at about 1 p.m. Saturday and Sunday this weekend. And we kind of just text message and email to get ourselves organized. But I think what Mike Bishop's doing is fantastic over in Alameda. The wind's a little lighter consistently there. And so he's able to get more learners out, and he's running racing. And I think he's running racing between 2 and 4 over at Alameda on Sundays. So I haven't decided, but we may put the boat on the roof Sunday and just go over and race. But, again, I think it's just it's pretty, all you have to do is show up. If you can figure out how to get the boat's parts, there's enough people to help you rig and get you out on the boat. And then I remember we had last season, when we were all locked down and the only one sailing, we had Chris, myself, with Mike Bishop, and then Sven's son Tor. The 4 of us out sailing. We had a 4.7, 2 radials, and a full rig, and it was blowing old snot on the city front, and we all went the same speed upwind, and it was just so much fun, And we're all sort of helping each other and giving people feedback and self-coaching and stuff like that. And it really, I really think just put the effort together to get the equipment together and just show up and check in. We'll help you rig it. We just want to see you out there having fun. So, do whatever it is to get the equipment, get out there, and we'll show you how to rig it. And we'll tell you when you're tacking it wrong or jibing it wrong or not pulling on the Cunningham hard enough. You'll know real fast. And so, just come on down. That's my attitude on the whole thing.
Yeah, just to build on Andrew's
it's also worth
point.
It's also worth promoting that there is an email list for what's called District 24, which extends from the Northern California border, including all of the Sierra Mountains all the way down to Huntington Lake, and what San Luis Obispo and then our whole area. And there's a huge amount of activity in the Central Valley and in the San Francisco Bay, just pretty much everywhere. And that email list has got almost 200 names on it now, I think. So you get a lot of information and talk to a lot of people and find out what's going on pretty easily from that. Yeah,
just to build on what Andrew said, and answer your question, Susan. yeah, Alameda is every Sunday. Email Mike Bishop. For those who are on the Zoom, you can see his email in the chat. And we're also going to be firing up once Front Daylight Savings Times hit. We'll fire up